today, Prime Minister Scott Morrison came out and said that the National Cabinet has come up with 7 principles to guide schools for the foreseeable future. Do we know what they entail?
Well, we do kind of know what they entail, but the main guiding principle is that states will decide individually what they will do within their own school system, and it's quite a confusing story across Australia. The key thing for listeners in Victoria is that schools will remain, where possible, online in Term 2. Only 3% of kids attended school at the end of the term there. So unless medical circumstances change, according to James Merlino, schools will be online in Victoria, while in New South Wales, in about week 3 of Term 2, kids are expected to go back to school and amazingly socially distance, and we're not quite sure how that works within a classroom as of yet.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I mean, one of the main criticisms that's been going along all this time for schools and childcare is that you can't realistically socially isolate to the legal 4 metres squared in a classroom. So what is the government kind of suggesting?
Well, they haven't given any suggestions. They're going to look into how they can apply that. Now, we do know that children are less likely to be severely affected if they get infected, but the teachers are just as likely at about a 10% rate, which is really quite high. And remembering that many of our teachers are also getting older, that doesn't take into account those children and those teachers who are potentially vulnerable. Children with asthma, as well as teachers with asthma, are incredibly vulnerable to coronavirus. So again, we don't quite know in the reality of the 21st century how 20th century built schools can socially distance, because they do not technically have the space. Now, there have been some good suggestions about how this could be potentially implemented, and I agree with some of those ideas, such as a slow general bring back of maybe year 12 so they can do their final year of exams, or staggering classes throughout the week. But again, that becomes a logistical nightmare. And the key thing is teachers have been doing double shifts. They've been both teaching in the classroom for those 3% or more of kids who've been attending for essential workers, as well as teaching online, because schools haven't been shut. Schools have been open and teachers have been working really, really hard. Jeez. So some of Scott Morrison's comments were a little bit disingenuous when he talked about his own children standing or sitting in the assembly hall looking at a screen. That's not how online learning and the schooling from home has been undertaken in schools. So the reality is not what his fantasy might necessarily be.
And looking at teachers as well, I mean, one of the statements that came out of yesterday was where the confusion arises is that teachers are more at risk in the staff room than they are in the classroom when it comes to health advice. How do you kind of respond to that?
Well, I think the whole factor is if restaurants aren't safe for adults to be in, and normal workplaces aren't necessarily safe for people to be in, are teachers safe to be in a school? Yes, staff rooms are a problem because it's where adults mix, but then again, the adults have the ability to socially distance, which little kids just don't know. If you've ever been in a kindy class or a P1 or a P2 class and tried to have children socially distance, then you possibly should be in a Marvel or DC comic because you have superhero powers. It's not possible. Not possible in a classroom. It's not possible in the staff room fully either. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, let alone the lack of hand sanitizer. So in some schools, a lack of access to sinks just to wash hands in, as well as with face masks. And teaching with a face mask, again, there's that personal interaction on the face-to-face that could be needed. So I would again suggest online is the way we need to go until we have some kind of better vaccine or methodology for supporting children in their learning.
Yeah, David, I mean, there's so many different challenges and barriers that have come up here. Look, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me this morning.
My pleasure, as always.